New developments in the case of Bryan Kohberger are causing a stir, as ABC News reports. Kohberger lawyer wants the public to see request for the judge to rethink dismissing charges. Arguments on the issue are set to be heard later this month.
Welcome to Verdict Vantage, covering breaking news stories. Thank you for supporting our research. We would like to extend a trigger warning before we continue. Please be advised.
This video contains discussions about true crime, which may include topics such as violence, assault, and other distressing incidents. Viewer discretion is advised.
This week brings new developments in the case of Bryan Kohberger and the Idaho University killings of 4 on-campus students.
Murder case that has been marked by secrecy and media restrictions. Now a lawyer for accused Idaho killer Bryan Kohberger is asking the judge to reconsider his decision to deny a motion to toss out the charges he faces. But that request to consider was made under seal due to a strict gag order that was in place, and the defense is now asking that the contents of that motion to reconsider be made public. Kohberger's defense has previously made 2 different attempts to get the indictment against him dismissed, the judge denying both requests in mid-December.
The report from ABC News reads, in a capital murder case that has been marked by secrecy and media restrictions, a lawyer for accused Idaho college killer Bryan Kohberger is now asking the judge to make public their arguments that he should rethink his decision to deny their request to toss out the charges. Mr. Kohberger acknowledges the right of the public to be fully informed of the issues, his lawyer wrote in a new filing posted to the docket Tuesday and filed on Friday. Kohberger's defense had previously made 2 different attempts to get the indictment against him dismissed. In one, they argued that the grand jury was given inaccurate instructions, that they used the wrong standard of proof. In the other, they argued that prosecutors withheld evidence that might aid Kohberger in defending himself, and biased the grand jury. The judge denied both in mid-December. Just before Christmas, Kohberger's team asked the judge to reconsider that decision, filing a request under seal. Kohberger's high-profile case has largely been veiled in secrecy due to a strict non-dissemination, or so-called, gag order in place. The defense has repeatedly criticized some media portrayals of their client, and the judge himself has chastised the media for what he called disappointing behavior filming proceedings by some members of the press. Both Kohberger's defense and prosecutors leading the case against him have supported limiting cameras in the courtroom, or even banning them entirely. The article goes on to state, in their new filing, Kohberger's lawyer says they only asked for those particular filings to be sealed in the first place solely because prosecutors wanted it and they were on deadline to file the motion. So they acquiesced. They say their client has a right for the relevant criminal rule to apply as it is written rather than disadvantage him with items remaining sealed that are not within the scope of that rule. Arguments on Kohberger's requests for the judge to reconsider his decision not to toss out the charges are set to be heard in pretrial hearings on January 26.
Our legal contributor, defense attorney, and host of Law and Crime Network, Bryan Buckmeyer, joining me now. Let's talk about the strategy here, Bryan. Why ask for the contents of this motion to be made public?
So I'm only reading the tea leaves here, but in my opinion, as a former public defender, and Bryan Kohberger is being represented by a public defender as well, is the media and the information against Bryan Kohberger is in many ways just negative towards him. I think this is a way of trying to get some of that information out in a positive light, try to push back, so to speak, on the court of public opinion and maybe have a more even view of this case, because ultimately, there's not going to be a plea deal in this case. It's going to go to trial. And when you're picking a jury, you want them to hear some beneficial information about your client in your case before they potentially get selected. The specific request is just for the defense's motion to reconsider and to dismiss the indictment, to potentially have an interlocutory, meaning a kind of pause on the proceedings where they go and appeal to a higher court, or a potential stay. They also want the prosecution's response to that motion to come up. Now, typically a motion of this nature is heavily in the legal aspect and kind of light on the factual portions. They're not really talking about, well, this evidence and this evidence proves that Bryan Kohberger is guilty or not guilty. They're really talking about procedurally why this indictment should be dismissed. And so for that purpose, I think it could come in. There could be a good chance. And that's what they're arguing. They say this is a lot different than the restrictions on the grand jury, which is very fact intensive, very evidence intensive. And it's understandable why the gag order may exist for that. But we could see a procedural argument, that being the motion to dismiss, come out. It's just up to the judge and their interpretation of their own gag order, as well as Idaho law in restricting information to the public.
Well, you heard it for yourself. There seems to be legal strategy strongly at play in the case of Bryan Kohberger versus the state of Idaho. What do you think? Leave your thoughts below in the comments section.
Bryan Kohberger is the Washington State University grad student accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students back in November of 2022. Ethan Chapin, Zana Kernodle, Haley Gonsalves, and Madison Mogut. They were all found stabbed to death inside of a large off-campus rental house at the University of Idaho. There was a massive police investigation as basically the entire Moscow Police Department started looking for who did this. And after this massive investigation, about 6 weeks after the murders, authorities arrested then 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, where he was spending Christmas break. They extradited him back to Idaho. They charged him with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. A grand jury looked over the evidence that prosecutors collected and officially indicted Bryan Kohberger on the charges, and the state has announced that it will be seeking the death penalty.
Here, we will review the body camera footage from a female officer who stopped Bryan for a traffic violation. This took place about a month prior to the tragedy that took place on campus. Let's watch.
Yeah. So technically you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because if the light turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, then you're on the red light. So that's the reason I stopped you. Do you have your license on you?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have the registration and insurance?
Let me just get this for you out.
You what?
I'm just gonna get this out for you.
Okay.
So would you explain that to me a little bit further? So in Pennsylvania, when you're stuck in that intersection, you have to make a left. So what would the appropriate thing for me to have done?
Not.
Just
You're not supposed to block an intersection like that in Washington, so just by you blocking the intersection, that's technically a ticketable violation, and then then you're running a red light, so it's another ticketable offense. So you're not supposed to proceed into the intersection until you can go, because a lot of people do what you just did, right? It's like you're sitting in the intersection waiting, and then turns, then you're blocking, so.
Yeah, there was a little bit of confusion with speeding because someone had stopped. I wasn't sure what they were doing, and then they put on their light to turn. Mm-hmm. So I thought that maybe they were letting me go through.
Oh.
Did you see that?
No. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like right before I made the turn, there was someone who made a right. They didn't have their signal on, so I wasn't sure if they were just waiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would just advise just don't enter the intersection until you can go, so you don't get stuck. Let's see.
But in that situation, the best thing to do then would be back up. And not.
I don't know if there's a best thing to do in that situation, because you're either going to back up into somebody, or you're going to run a red light. So, or you're going to be sitting in an intersection. There's not really a great option there.
Yeah, I was just slightly into the crosswalk, so, where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have, crosswalks.
Oh,
so even if you're kind of slightly, there's a little bit more leeway as well. Like, there are a few lines, there's one right line, and there's another one, there's like a certain margin from which you can actually kind of put your vehicle, place your vehicle. Yeah, so I know laws vary state to state, but there is a law in Washington for blocking an intersection like that, proceeding through when you don't, when you're just stalling. I forget the actual verbiage. I can find it for you, but it's like stalling, blocking an intersection. I'm just curious about the law. I don't need to. Oh no, yeah, I can find it for you. Yeah. 1 second. That looks good on a Hyundai. I don't see Pennsylvania registration at all. Okay, let's see. Expires November 22nd or 2022. Okay. And yeah, one of those. Yeah. Okay, that looks good. I'll hand that back to you. I'm just gonna go check your info. I'll try to find that RCW, the law for you. And I'll be right back. Thank you. All right. Okay, so I found it. So I don't know what in Pennsylvania where you go to find laws, but in Washington it's called the Revised Code of Washington. So I'll try to turn my brightness up, but it's basically just called an RCW, so it's RCW 46.61.202, so it's no driver shall enter an intersection unless there is significant space on the other side of the intersection. To accommodate the vehicle, he is operating without obstructing the passage of other vehicles, despite any traffic control signal indications to proceed. So you had a green light, so you're thinking you can go, but you're blocking the intersection. So that's, if you're ever curious in any laws in Washington, just Revised Code of Washington. So I'm not writing a ticket or anything like that today. I understand you're from Pennsylvania, but in the future, don't proceed through the intersection. You can't get stopped for that alone, unless you can clear it right away. So, so then basically, I understand.
You're just supposed to wait behind the white line. Drivers do it all the time, but
it never even occurred to me that was actually something wrong. Except for the fact that I was blocking. crosswalk, which is
and states vary a lot from laws. Like Pennsylvania might not even have that law, but in Washington we do.
I'm actually just from a very rural area, so we just don't have crosswalks.
Oh.
Unless I visit an area where there are crosswalks, and then it's not very.
Now, let's review body camera footage of Bryan Kohberger and his father getting pulled over after the murders in Idaho. As we watch, share your thoughts in the comments.
Hello, how y'all doing? Good. Take your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on the van, man. He's right up on the back of that van. Whoever for some days. Is this your car? Okay, cool. Where you headed?
Well, you're coming from WSU.
What's WSU? So I'm having a hard time here because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going there? Oh, okay.
We're trying to drive
Hours, days.
Right.
Okay. And what did you say about some SWAT team thing?
Yeah, there was a mass shooting here.
Where? So y'all work at the university there? Oh. Okay. I hadn't heard about that incident. Just today or?
I'm not sure there's two shootings, but they shoot somebody.
I see. Interesting. Well, okay. But do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay? All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, let's watch them get pulled over a second time, less than 10 minutes later, and, this time, they were pulled over by an unmarked vehicle.
It's not you're driving by me there, you're looking close back at semi. You guys did? You guys saw that trooper? We don't have the SUVs. It was county guys in like a black SUV. Okay, alright. You said you guys followed too closely? Today? Well, I'm not going to give you guys a particular warning if you just got stopped. Just make sure you keep yourself fine. So it's all about how fast you're going, okay? So if you're going 10 miles an hour, you only do one car. So it's getting your second. You're going 7 miles an hour, you get 7 cars. Yeah? That's an easy way to explain it. Yeah. We're not heading. Thank you so much. Where we're headed? Where we're at? Yeah, the long haul. Best for airplanes. Alright, we're heading. Please have a safe trip. Thanks. Safe.
Verdict Vantage, thanks you for tuning in. Your support means the world to our channel. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and hit the subscribe button to join our amazing community. Stay in the loop on future updates by ringing the notification bell. And if you found this valuable, sharing is caring. Thanks again for being here.
But one of the central issues in this case, one of the key pieces of evidence that we have talked about extensively here on Sidebar, is DNA. Behind the crime scene is linked to Bryan Kohberger. Authorities were able to make a familial match of the DNA to Kohberger's father. They did this by collecting trash from outside the Kohberger's home in Pennsylvania. Then after Kohberger was arrested, authorities took a cheek swab from him. The court documents reveal that the DNA recovered from the sheath is an almost identical match to Kohberger.